Hey guys, tonight we're not entering a gilded ballroom or parading through torchlit corridors in velvet shoes. No, tonight we're slipping quietly past the heavy doors of the royal bedchamber, where power isn't shouted, it's whispered. You're not dressed to impress, you're dressed to disappear. Linen apron, clean hands, tongue firmly held, because here, in the quietest rooms of the palace, reputations rise, kingdoms tilt, and the wrong side can get you dismissed, if not beheaded. The air smells of lavender water and beeswax polish. Candlelight flickers against embossed wood paneling. You carry a copper basin, just warm enough for washing but not too hot to scald. Your footsteps are muffled by thick rugs from the Levant, and as the door closes behind you, you understand. You're not in a bedroom. You're in a battlefield made of sheets, silence, and sideways glances. Welcome to the bedchamber staff. You're one of the lowliest here, yet somehow you've just been handed the keys to everything. Why? Because you see things no one else does. The king's sleeping habits, the queen's tears, the servants who slip in at night and don't leave until morning. You see who really holds the reins when the throne is empty. Your job? Bathe the royals, change their linens, dress their wounds, unlace their shoes. Your real job? Keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. Because every chambermaid who survives knows, the walls may not have ears, but the mattresses do, and they remember everything. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always amazing to see where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first shift begins just before dusk. The queen is still at her evening devotions, and her bed must be turned down. You shake out the sheets like you've been trained. Once, twice, no noise, no wrinkles, linen straightened, pillows fluffed, the royal nightgown draped just so across the foot. Every motion rehearsed, performed as if the curtains are open and the court is watching. Because they are, in a way. You share a narrow straw mattress with two other girls down in the servants' quarters. But up here, the royal mattress is goose down, embroidered, likely stuffed by nuns. Historians still argue whether certain monarchs imported their bedding from convents for sanctity, or just because it was better sewn. Either way, you can't help but press your fingers into it a little longer than necessary. Its softness, like you've never known. Then comes the moment of hush. The queen enters, and everything changes. She doesn't see you. Not really. You become part of the furniture. You kneel, eyes lowered, hands in your lap. You hold your breath as she sighs, unpins her veil, and allows her ladies-in-waiting to begin their careful ritual of undressing. Everything here is symbolic. The removal of a girdle, a sign of trust. The unbraiding of hair, a sign of vulnerability. You think it's just bedtime? But this is politics wrapped in lace. That night, you're tasked with carrying out the chamber pot. It's surprisingly heavy, warm, slightly sloshing. You grip the handles tight and wonder, was this really your dream job? You'd hope to be near royalty, just not this near. You pass a pair of guards. They nod. You nod. You all pretend this is very dignified. Later, down in the scullery, you hear whispers. One girl insists she saw the Duchess slipping out of the king's rooms again. Another claims the queen has stopped bleeding. She might be pregnant, or sick, or worse. No one knows for sure, but you learn fast. In the world of the bedchamber, facts are elastic, and gossip stretches even further. The next morning, you're up before dawn. You prepare the morning basin, rosewater this time, for the queen's hands, and there's the royal comb, its teeth missing 2 prongs from some ancient tantrum. They never replaced it. Some say it's bad luck to touch the queen's hair with a new one. Others say it's just tradition. Either way, no one dares break the habit, not even the queen. Your days blur together, fluff the pillow, smooth the coverlet, smile at the right people, and always, always listen. One evening, you hear the king bark in frustration behind the tapestry. The queen won't come to his bed tonight. She's unwell, again, and someone mutters, "She'll regret that." Weeks pass, and still, you stay silent, because you've begun to understand something no tutor or etiquette manual could have taught you. In the bedchamber, it's not always the person who speaks who holds the power. It's the one who listens and remembers. And tonight, tucked in the corner of the room, behind a velvet curtain, you'll be listening harder than ever before. You don't know what wakes you, exactly. Maybe the creak of the corridor boards, maybe the shift in candlelight, but you're fully alert by the time the door eases shut again, and someone has entered the queen's bedchamber who absolutely shouldn't be here. It's not the king. You're crouched in the linen closet, pretending to organize spare cloths. You shouldn't be here either, technically, but sometimes the quietest corners are the best places to think, or cry, or just escape the constant clatter of other servants' chatter, or, apparently, to become an unwilling witness. The intruder moves quickly but carefully. A man, dressed in dark doublet and hose, not a servant, not a guard. He crosses to the queen's desk, rifles swiftly through the drawers, and pulls something out. A letter? A handkerchief? You can't tell in the dim light, and you're certainly not about to announce yourself. Then he's gone, as fast as he came, and the door sighs shut behind him like nothing ever happened. You breathe again, and just like that, your first secret is born, a private moment witnessed, a quiet wrong committed. You'll carry it with you, not because you want to, but because knowledge, in the bedchamber, is both burden and weapon. The next morning, the queen sits for her toilette with the same practiced elegance, her face a mask of composure, but her favorite inkwell has been moved slightly to the left. You notice. She does too. Her fingers hover near it longer than usual. So you learn. The bedchamber isn't just a room. It's a stage where nothing is quite what it seems. Beds are for sleeping, yes, but they're also where royal decisions are quietly reversed, where heirs are made, or not, and where whispered promises are traded like contraband beneath embroidered covers. That afternoon, you fetch sheets from the laundry and pass Lady Annalise, who gives you a look that suggests she knows something about you, or at least suspects. She's the queen's chief lady-in-waiting, and her eyes could cut through velvet. You nod politely, bow your head, and scuttle away. Historians still argue whether queens ever had true privacy. After all, in many courts, from Versailles to Westminster, royals were expected to dress, bathe, even give birth in front of witnesses. Privacy, as we know it, hadn't been invented yet. In fact, the more powerful the person, the less private their life became. A full bladder? Someone watches. A cough in the night? 5 people respond. Want to write a secret letter? Good luck doing that with 3 maids folding gowns behind you and a chaplain lurking near the drapes. But the secrecy still thrived. in clever ways. Lovers met in laundry rooms. Servants passed notes hidden in rolled stockings. And you start learning to recognize the unspoken cues. The way the queen presses her thumb against the bedpost when anxious. The way her foot taps, just once, when she's lying. These little tells become your gospel. Tonight, you're assigned to fluff the king's bed instead. A rare shift. His chamber smells different. Leather-bound books, pipe smoke, and something metallic. Not blood, exactly. More like polished sword hilts and coins. The king is not there. Thank heaven. Just a page boy with a nervous twitch and a tray of uneaten cherries. But here, too, the politics ripple. There's only one pillow on the king's bed. Strange. Most royals use two. You ask the page boy, carefully, about it. He shrugs. Said he doesn't need one tonight. A pause. He's expecting company. The way he says company is thick with implication. Later, you learn who that company was. And it wasn't the queen. So now you understand another rule. The marital bed is often a formality. The real decisions happen elsewhere. In side chambers, in guest rooms, even on hunting trips. Monarchs perform marriage like theater, publicly loyal, privately tangled. You recall the story another maid told you about Catherine de' Medici. Legend says she drilled holes in the bedroom walls to spy on couples at court. Whether it's true or not, historians can't agree. But the myth survives because it fits. Rulers want to know what happens when no one's watching. And bedchambers, supposedly private, become places of strategic observation. As you carry fresh linen upstairs, you pass Lord Broderick, the Queen's cousin. He gives you a look too familiar for comfort. You clutch the sheets tighter. He's been lurking more lately, asking questions about the Queen's moods, her preferences. You pretend not to notice, because to notice would be to participate. And once you participate, you become vulnerable. Later, at dinner, the Queen laughs too hard at something dull. The king doesn't look up, and Lady Annalise's smile holds just a sliver of frost. Something's brewing. You're not sure what, but the tension is in the beds now. In the way they're made, the way they're entered, the way some stay empty longer than they should. And you start dreaming of keys to the linen cupboard, yes, but also keys to secrets, to rooms locked when they shouldn't be, to moments you weren't supposed to see, and you wake with the taste of candle smoke in your mouth and a single uncomfortable thought. You might survive this place, but not without learning how to lie in silence. The Queen's night begins the same way every evening, publicly. You stand by the bedpost as courtiers file in to observe what's known as le coucher, the ritual of being put to bed. You'd assumed, naively, that bedtime would be private, but this isn't about sleep. It's a performance. Everyone who matters is watching. The Queen sits stiffly at the edge of her vast bed, hair brushed exactly 100 strokes by Lady Annalise, while two maids warm her slippers near the brazier. A court physician offers her a syrupy cordial. She declines with a flick of her wrist, but you catch the tension in her jaw. You recognize the sign now. She's bracing for something. One by one, important people come forward to wish her good night. It's like saying goodbye before a voyage, long, formal, and heavily choreographed. The Duke of Somerset kisses her hand. The bishop bows so low he almost topples. Each of them gets only a few words. And yet you can feel the weight of those murmured exchanges. This isn't affection. It's negotiation, softened by velvet and perfume. And then, at last, The doors close. Her hair is unbound. Her stays are loosened. The golden canopy is drawn, and the queen's entire body exhales. Only now does she become a person. You're one of 3 maids assigned tonight? Your job? Smooth the bed cover, set the chamber clock, place a warming pan beneath the sheets, and, strangely, fold the edge of the blanket exactly 6 inches down. No more. No less. You'd questioned that rule once. Early on. Lady Annalise had hissed. 6 inches. Always. The king likes it that way. Except, the king almost never visits anymore. So you wonder, is this habit a performance or hope? Tonight, the queen says nothing as she climbs into bed, but her silence is thicker than usual. She lies stiffly, eyes open, waiting. You finish your tasks, extinguish the candles, and retreat behind the dressing screen. You're supposed to sleep there, on a small stool. Should the queen need anything, a royal bell hangs nearby, one gentle ring enough to summon you, but she doesn't ring, not tonight. Instead, just as your eyelids begin to flutter closed, she speaks. Her voice is low, flat. Did anyone come in today while I was walking with the Duchess? You sit up. No, Your Majesty. A pause. What about yesterday? You hesitate. Too long. She turns her head slightly, just enough to catch the movement. You saw something, didn't you? You lower your gaze. Say nothing. That, too, is an answer. She sighs. Next time, say it plainly. Secrets breed like mice. You nod, heart pounding, and then she says no more. You fall asleep, eventually, to the sound of her turning restlessly beneath brocade. In the morning, the ritual reverses. A crowd reassembles to watch the queen awaken. Yes. She performs. Waking up. Her eyes open at just the right moment. She stretches as if on cue. The curtains are drawn back dramatically. Like theater, you offer her a bowl of rose water. She rinses her fingers, and the ladies begin dressing her for the day. The royal dressing ritual is elaborate. It begins with underlayers, chemise, petticoat, corset. Then the outer garments, kirtle, sleeves, stomacher, farthingale. Each layer is presented on a silver tray as if it were a holy relic, and each person who dresses her has a rank. Only one is permitted to fasten the final clasp. What's fascinating, though, is how much can be communicated during this process. A change in color scheme? That means favoring a particular faction? An unusual necklace? That's a message to the court. Perhaps an apology. Perhaps a threat. Even the way her bodice is tied says something. Tight and stiff? She's in command? Loose and soft? She's pleading. Historians often debate whether royal women had real agency. Some argue they were mere symbols, draped in beauty and silence. Others insist the bedchamber was their true domain. Here, the queen could direct narratives through gesture, posture, even scent. Yes, scent. You hadn't realized it at first, but now you notice she changes perfume depending on her audience. Rose for the bishop, jasmine when speaking to the chancellor, vetiver, earthy and sharp when meeting the king. Is it manipulation, survival, maybe both? That evening, while preparing her bed again, you find a second pillow placed at the head. Unusual. You're not told why, but Lady Annalise gives you a hard look when you move it. Leave it, she snaps. You obey. Later, you see the king's boots by the door. He's come to visit. It's a shock to everyone, especially, you suspect, the queen. But when he enters, She greets him with the cool composure of someone accepting an unpleasant but expected chore. You don't stay? Of course. You're ushered out with practiced hands and quiet urgency, but you wait by the door, not listening, just existing nearby. He leaves an hour later, faster than he arrived. No goodbyes, no lingering. You go in afterward to tidy. The queen lies staring at the ceiling. Her crown, removed for the night, sits beside her, catching candlelight. Did he say anything? She asks you softly. No, Your Majesty. Another long silence. Then, almost as an afterthought, don't change the second pillow. Not yet. You bow and leave. That night, back on your straw mattress, you think about how strange it all is. That royal love can look like business. That bedtime can resemble battle prep. That a simple fold of a blanket or a misplaced ribbon can ripple through politics. But stranger, still, you're beginning to learn the language of it. It begins with a scream. You're still half asleep in your corner behind the screen, eyes blurry, brain cottony, when the shriek jolts you upright, then running footsteps, doors flung open, the queen's ladies in chaos. You stumble into the hall in your shift, heart thudding, just in time to see the king storming down the corridor, red-faced and snarling. Behind him, two servants carry away something small and crumpled. A velvet pouch? No, a bundle of letters. Pages scatter behind them like feathers in a storm. Later, you piece together the story from whispers and sideways glances. A letter was found in the queen's pillow, not addressed to the king, and not written by her. Someone had hidden it there. You're not sure if you should feel guilty. You're not the one who hid it. But you did fluff the pillows last night. You touched it. You missed it. Or maybe you chose not to notice. That's the trick of bedchamber politics. You can't always tell the difference between what you saw and what you pretended not to. The palace is a living creature now. Everyone breathes shallowly. Even the tapestries seem to tremble. The queen doesn't leave her chambers for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she reappears, dazzling. A new gown of stiff blue silk, hair pinned higher than usual. That second pillow, still there, but the king hasn't returned. You spend the afternoon changing her linens while she writes at her desk, her quills scratching with slow precision. She doesn't look at you, but she speaks. Do you think it's possible, she says, as if to no one, to love someone out of duty? You keep folding? I don't know. Your Majesty? She nods faintly. Neither do I. Then she smiles. Do you know how we met? The king and I? You blink. No. Of course you don't. She continues anyway. He was late to our engagement supper. I was told it was nerves. I think now it was regret. She looks over her shoulder at you. We don't choose our beds, you know, just how we lie in them. That night, you help her into bed with extra care. She looks tired, but composed. You pull the covers to her chin, smooth the blanket, 6 inches, as always. She smiles, tiredly, but not unkindly. Do you sleep well, little ghost? She asks. You freeze. Ghost? She chuckles. You move like one, always watching, always quiet. You smile, unsure whether to be flattered or frightened. Then you extinguish the candles and return to your stool. Much later, long after she's fallen into whatever restless sleep queens are allowed, you hear footsteps outside. You open the door a crack. Just a peek. It's the Duke, the king's cousin. He pauses, looks straight at the door, straight at you, but says nothing. Then he turns and disappears into the west wing. You know that walk? It's the path to the king's private study. And you suddenly understand something. The letter in the pillow. It wasn't meant for the queen. It was meant to be found. You lie awake for hours after that. Historians still argue whether royal marriages in the 15th and 16th centuries were more alliance or performance. Probably both. But within those alliances, power pulsed like blood, quiet but constant. It didn't roar through battlefields. It slipped through door hinges and glove compartments. It whispered beneath bed frames and behind drawn curtains. Take, for example, Anne of Denmark, queen to King James VI, and I. Rumors swirled that her ladies-in-waiting served as unofficial envoys, slipping messages between her and foreign courtiers. Nothing provable, but many believe she ran her own network of influence through powder boxes, handkerchiefs, and whispered nightcaps. Tonight, your queen seems to be learning the same strategy. You notice she's receiving more gifts lately. Small ones. A book. A pearl comb. A ribbon in a strange shade of green. You're the one who unwraps them. Of course. Checks them for pins, poisons, or messages. One evening, you find a pressed flower between the pages of a psalter. Violet. Fragile. No note. Just that. You report it. Lady Annalise says nothing, just folds it in a cloth and pockets it. And yet, 2 days later, the queen wears a violet brooch. Not a word is said, but the message is heard. You're starting to see the pattern now. Bedchamber politics isn't about loud moves. It's about symbols, about silences. A stolen glance, a folded corner of a blanket, a shared servant, a pause in a sentence. Even the queen's yawns are calculated. She yawns when the bishop enters, claiming fatigue. She yawns when a cousin arrives, feigning boredom. But when Lord Broderick visits, just to check on her health, she's bright and alert. You don't think it's affection. You think it's preparation. That night, she whispers. He's not the sharpest blade, but he's useful. Like, you don't ask who. You don't need to. And so you keep doing your job, laying out the sheets, folding the linens, lighting the candles. But your ears stay open, your eyes sharper, because here in the royal bedchamber, you're not just a maid. You're a witness to the theater of survival. By now, you've grown used to moving like a shadow. You slip through chambers with folded hands and lowered eyes. People speak around you, not to you, but that's where the magic lives. Because when no one thinks you're listening, they reveal everything. Take Lady Celeste, for instance. A vision of lace and civility by day. But last night, you watched her slip a bundle of coins into the gloved palm of a footman. He disappeared toward the stables, and she smiled at her reflection, as if she just said a prayer. Bribes, you realize, aren't shouted. They're whispered through feather pillows and passed in embroidery hoops. And the queen? She's beginning to understand just how powerful her silence can be. She spends more time in her rooms now, surrounded by a carefully chosen few. The loud, foolish courtiers have been replaced by quiet women with shrewd eyes and excellent memories. You're one of them. Not officially of course, but she watches you now when she speaks. Pauses, waits for your reaction. She knows you see things. She may not trust you, but she respects your ability to endure. You're handed a new task today. Deliver a sealed envelope to the tailor. It's not your usual chore. You're a bedchambermaid, not a messenger. But Lady Annalise says it's a quiet errand, and her tone doesn't leave room for argument. The letter is light, but the weight of it presses against your palm the entire walk. You try not to look. You really do, but curiosity is a hungry thing. So you glance. Just once. The seal is waxed in deep green, a color you've only seen associated with Lord Broderick. Inside, you catch a hint of folded parchment, scented with rosemary. No names, just an initial, D. You deliver it without incident. The tailor doesn't even blink, just tucks it into his coat and offers you a fig from his dish. You refuse politely. Later, back in the bedchamber, the queen is laughing, genuinely. Lady Annalise reads aloud a sonnet about a swan who forgot how to swim. It's not very good, but everyone pretends it is. That's court life in miniature. Poor poetry. Excellent performance. You notice the queen is wearing the violet ribbon again. And the second pillow remains untouched. That night, you ask an older maid about the last queen. She lowers her voice. She died in that bed, she whispers. Whispering names no one recognized. Could have been lovers. Could have been ghosts. You don't ask more, but the idea lingers. This bed you fluff and turn down each night, it remembers things. Skin, breath, betrayal. It's soaked in them. And if beds remember, so do the people who serve them. Historians often debate how much influence a queen's inner circle truly wielded. Some point to figures like Sarah Churchill, who practically ruled England beside Queen Anne. Others mention Madame de Maintenon, rumored to be Louis XIV's secret wife, guiding policy from the shadows of the royal boudoir. But those are the names that survived. Most didn't. Your name will likely not survive either, but that doesn't mean your work is invisible. Quite the opposite. You notice that, recently, more people have begun asking you questions. How the queen is sleeping, what book she's reading, whether she's taken to warm milk again before bed. You say nothing, corsteci, but you notice who's asking, and who's asking too much. Lord Gervais corners you in the corridor. His breath smells of sweet wine and desperation. Does Her Majesty sleep well these days? He asks, casually, as if you're old friends. You smile. Like a child, my lord. He raises an eyebrow. Restless, then. You don't correct him, just curtsy and slip away. He believes what he wants to believe. And that's the real secret of bedchamber politics. It's not about telling lies. It's about letting people lie to themselves and deciding whether you'll help them. One evening, you return to the chamber and find a gift on your stool. A tiny carved comb, walnut wood, smooth, no note. You look around, no one sees, or they pretend not to. You leave it untouched. The queen notices it hours later, picks it up, weighs it in her hand. Keep it, she says simply. It suits you. You bow. Thank you, Your Majesty. Then she leans closer. But don't use it where anyone can see. You nod and understand. Everything in this world, combs, letters, glances, is a message, and every message can be twisted. The next night, the king visits again, unexpectedly. You are told, bluntly, to stay far away. You sneak a peek from the corridor anyway. He enters the room slowly, not angry, not eager, just tired. The queen stands. They speak briefly. He doesn't sit. And then, as quickly as he came, he leaves again. The second pillow remains untouched. You slip in later to clean. The queen is sitting in bed, unspeaking. On the table beside her is a single item, a pair of gloves, too large for her hands. They smell of smoke and steel. She looks at you. He doesn't sleep here. she says, as if it surprises her. Then, he hasn't for a long time. You don't reply. You simply adjust the blanket. 6 inches. Always. Mistresses are part of life now, not yours, of course. The queens, the kings, the dukes, the lords and ladies. Everyone seems to have someone they shouldn't, tucked just out of sight. Sometimes, not even out of sight, just out of reach. And no one speaks of it plainly. They call it companionship, or arrangement, or her special music tutor. But everyone knows. And tonight, you're changing the linens in the chamber of one of those arrangements. Lady Sabina, blonde, sharp, laughed, young enough to be the king's daughter. She lives in the West Wing now, in rooms that used to belong to the old queen's aunt. Her mirrors are larger, her gowns brighter, and her perfume, orange blossom, overwhelming, leaks out beneath her door like ambition. You smooth her sheets with practiced calm. The bed is grand but lacks the quiet dignity of the queen's. This one is new money, new power. Everything screams notice me. Lady Sabina watches you as you work. Do you enjoy cleaning, little one? She asks, swirling wine in a crystal glass. You offer the standard answer. I enjoy serving, my lady. She smiles, amused. Good. Then serve this court well, and remember who has the king's ear. You nod and back away, bowing. But as you leave, you glance behind and see it. The second pillow. Again. So now the king keeps 2 second pillows, one in the queen's room, one here, or perhaps neither is ever used. Perhaps they're just there, like decoys, symbols of possibility, or pity. Historians still argue whether royal mistresses held true power. Some say they were mere distractions, ornaments draped in silk. Others insist they were kingmakers, whispering names into ears and changing the course of kingdoms before breakfast. Madame de Pompadour comes up often, not just a mistress, but an advisor, an arts patron, a political force. Her influence extended well past the bedroom. Some say she never even slept with Louis XV after a while, but her voice never left his thoughts. Here in your palace, Lady Sabina may not be Pompadour, but she's learning the art of influence, quickly, and the queen knows. You see it in the way she adjusts her posture at court. A bit straighter now, a little more still. Stillness is the weapon of queens. A moving target can be mocked. A statue cannot. That evening, while brushing her hair, she speaks to you, not as a superior, but like someone thinking aloud. She'll find it harder than she thinks, she says. You don't ask who. You don't need to. She continues. Being admired is easy. Being obeyed is harder. Then, did you know I was once loved? Your brush falters. I was, briefly, before I became useful. She smiles faintly. That's the trade, you know, love for leverage. You nod, unsure if you're supposed to agree. That night, after everyone leaves, she sits awake in bed, staring at the opposite wall. She has no book, no embroidery, just silence. You sit nearby, on your little stool, unsure what to do. Then she says softly, Tell me something true. You blink. Your Majesty? Something only you know. You hesitate. I once dropped a royal spoon and hid it in the fireplace. She laughs, genuinely. You would. Then she looks at you. Really looks. You're clever, she says. But cleverness is a fire. Use it well, or it burns you. That's the closest thing to advice you've ever been given. Days later, the scandal breaks. A letter, unsigned, but unmistakable, is found in the palace gardens. It details an affair between a nobleman and a married lady. It doesn't name names, but it describes a violet ribbon, a glove, a second pillow. It's too vague to act on officially, but too specific to ignore. People turn on each other like startled horses. Lady Sabina claims innocence. The Queen says nothing, but the court begins to shift. Whispers rise like steam in the corridors. Some servants are questioned. A stable boy vanishes. You say nothing, because you know exactly how such letters are made. You've seen the ink. You've watched the sealing wax pool like blood. You know where the paper came from. You know who handed it to the gardener. And you know why. Because the Queen is fighting back, not with swords or tantrums, but with suggestion, with innuendo, with placement. She's reclaiming her space in the bedchamber, not by removing the mistress, but by making the mistress look unstable, untrustworthy, dangerous, and it's working. That night, you return to her chamber and find her sleeping soundly for the first time in weeks, both pillows fluffed, sheets crisp, her hands folded across her waist like peace offerings. You pull the blankets up, 6 inches, always. As you snuff the candles, you glance toward the fire. The logs are low, but steady. A soft glow warms the room. Then you notice something tucked near the grate. A crumpled glove. Too large for her hands, too familiar, and just like that, you understand, the war is far from over. It has simply gone deeper underground. You close the curtain and take your place beside the bed. The Queen isn't eating. Not much. Anyway, you watch her pick apart roast quail with the tines of her fork, moving pieces around the plate like chessmen she's not ready to sacrifice. When the footmen remove the tray, most of the meat is untouched, just a single bite missing, as if taken for show. Her appetite is vanishing, but not her alertness. If anything, she seems sharper, more focused, the kind of clarity that comes when someone decides not to weep anymore. You've seen this before, in smaller ways. A laundress who quietly stopped crying over her absent husband. A cook who lost a child and never missed a shift. But in the Queen, it's terrifying. Because when a woman who has been dismissed for months starts paying attention again, people get nervous. The king, for example, he hasn't slept here in weeks, but now his messengers arrive daily. Notes, gifts, tokens of vague remorse. This morning it was a small portrait, framed in filigree. The Queen opened it, stared at it, and placed it face down without a word. Then she turned to you and said, "Would you burn that for me?" You hesitated. "Your Majesty, it's royal property. So are my hands," she said, "and I'll use them however I like." You took the portrait and fed it to the fire that evening, piece by smoky piece. Historians still argue whether queens were expected to forgive infidelity as part of their role. In many royal courts, France, Spain, even England, it was practically baked into the crown. A queen who protested too much risked being called difficult. A queen who said nothing was called graceful. But a queen who played back? That was dangerous. Today, the Queen receives a visitor, Lady Josette, widow of a minor baron, and rumored to have been the king's first love before duty swept him elsewhere. You stand behind the dressing screen, ostensibly preparing shoes for the evening walk. But you listen carefully. They speak in low tones. Polite, too polite. You hear phrases like loyal service and our shared responsibilities, but the temperature in the room drops 2 degrees with every sentence. Finally, Lady Josette rises to leave. She says, "You are still the queen, of course." And the queen replies, "And you're still permitted inside the palace. For now." That night, she has you fetch her old prayer book, the one she hasn't opened in weeks. You dust it off, expecting her to sit and murmur the usual Latin murmurings of royal repentance. Instead, she opens it and begins to rip out pages. One by one. You say nothing. You just kneel and collect the strips. She smiles. "I always hated the part about turning the other cheek." She pauses. "I'd rather bite." Later, Lady Annalise finds you in the corridor. She walks with the confidence of someone who hasn't been caught. Yet, she tucks a folded paper into your apron pocket. "Don't open it," she says. You open it the moment you're alone. It's not a letter. It's a list. 5 names, all women, all recently installed as companions to influential men. You recognize 2 of them as frequent visitors to Lady Sabina. You realize this isn't just gossip, it's strategy. A quiet purge is underway. That night, the queen tells you to double-check her canopy. You do. It's fine. She smiles. You don't see it yet, but soon, the people who lie down beside power will wish they'd stood farther away. You're not sure if she means the king or someone else. There's a new girl in the servants' quarters, barely 14, country accent, assigned to the linen rooms, but she's already been asked to deliver trays to Lord Broderick twice. Too eager to open. You warn her gently. Don't speak unless spoken to, and don't let them close the door. She looks puzzled. Close the door? You nod. If it closes behind you, it's harder to get out. You don't tell her how many girls never came back from behind those doors. Instead, you ask if she's good at sewing. She is. You pass her a bundle of old underlinen and ask her to repair it. It's a test, to see if she can be trusted, not just with stitches, but with silence, because soon you're going to need more quiet hands. That evening, the queen receives a scroll from the foreign ambassador. She breaks the seal, reads a line, and bursts into quiet laughter. "Did you know," she says, "that in the Persian court, wives are ranked not by birth, but by dream interpretation? If you tell a good dream, you're promoted. If your dream is bad, you're banished." You blink. What happens if you don't dream at all? She closes the scroll. Then you're probably in charge. She doesn't elaborate. You write it down anyway. That night, there's shouting in the West Wing, Lady Sabina's voice, shrill and indignant. The king's, lower, muffled. You stay where you are. You already know what's happening. It's not a breakup, not yet, but it's a reckoning. And when the dust settles, someone will be left out in the cold. You just don't think it'll be the queen. The queen begins her mornings with silence now. No greetings, no instructions, just a long, still stare out the narrow windows while the rest of the palace stirs below. You've learned not to speak until spoken to. Her silence is not moodiness, it's calculation. Something is shifting again. You sense it in the small things. Fewer visitors, the lace cuffs she no longer wears, a certain blue ink she stopped using. You don't know the reasons yet, but that's not your job. Your job is to notice. And tonight, you notice something unusual. The chambermaid roster has been changed. You're now the only one assigned to the queen's bedchamber after dusk. The others have been quietly moved to the scullery or sewing rooms. No announcements, no explanations, just you. alone. It's not an honor. It's a burden, and it means she trusts you, or she has no one else left. Lady Annalise hands you a small ring of keys with no ceremony. Don't lose these, she says, briskly. And don't unlock anything you weren't told to. You nod. But you also notice one of the keys has fresh scratches near the teeth. Recently copied? Recently used? You place it in the hidden pouch sewn into your bodice, just in case. Historians still argue whether royal bedchambers were private realms or performance spaces. Likely both. The French court formalized it into ritual, lever and coucher, public undressing and dressing, full of symbolism. But even there, behind the ritual, real decisions happened. Real betrayals. Real whispers. And now, the Queen is writing more. Letters. Lists. Ledgers. At first you thought they were for her confessor. Then you realized her confessor hadn't been allowed inside in weeks. So who is she writing to? One day, she hands you a sealed parchment with no name. Deliver this to the laundress. No one else. The laundress? You do as told. And when you hand it over, the laundress doesn't even blink. Just slides the letter into her wash basket and offers you a pickled plum. You realize this isn't just correspondence. It's a network, not courtiers, not ministers, servants, quiet, overlooked, loyal. The Queen's new circle of influence runs not through court titles, but laundry lines, herb gardens, kitchen doors. It's brilliant. It's dangerous. You feel the weight of it in your apron pocket. A second sealed note, this time marked only with a red thread. You don't open it. You don't need to. You just hope the kitchen boy knows where to take it. Later, while brushing the Queen's hair, you catch her watching you in the mirror. You've stopped asking questions, she says. You pause. You told me not to. I did. She tilts her head. But only the foolish obey everything. A test. You nod slowly. Then I'll ask one now. She raises an eyebrow. Why me? Her smile is small. Because you listen. And you don't panic. Then she adds, after a moment, and you remind me what it's like to have no power. That stings a little, but it's true. That night, she pulls out a small box from beneath her pillow. Not gilded, not velvet lined, just simple wood. Inside, 2 rings, one broken, a handkerchief embroidered with faded initials, and a dried orange peel. She sets it in your lap. Bury this tomorrow, she says, somewhere no one looks. You nod, wrapping it carefully in cloth. She adds, when you return, bring me my old slippers. Why? She glances down at her feet. They don't squeak. And you understand. She's planning something. That morning, Lord Broderick arrives unannounced. Again. You're in the chamber when he enters, flanked by 2 guards. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't need to. He's here as the king's shadow, and shadows don't knock. The Queen rises, composed. To what do I owe the displeasure? He smiles with the smoothness of someone who has never heard no. A concern has been raised, he says, pulling a scroll from his coat, about a certain maid, with access to private chambers, who delivers unmonitored messages. You keep your expression blank. He doesn't look at you. Not yet. The Queen says nothing, just folds her hands. Unfortunate. Really. Broderick continues. To think how easily influence could pass through sheets and drawers. Now he looks at you, and then back at her. A challenge. A trap. The Queen doesn't blink. She's a maid, she says coldly. If she had power, we'd all be dead by now. A pause. Then she adds, "But if your concern is that she speaks out of turn, perhaps you should first inspect your own hallways." Broderick stiffens. You don't move. You don't breathe. Then he turns and leaves. The queen doesn't speak for a long time. Then she says, "He's starting to panic." "How can you tell?" "He brought guards." "That's never a good sign." Later, in the corridor, Lady Annalise catches your arm. She whispers, "There will be changes soon. Keep your head down." You nod, but you already know. Keeping your head down won't be enough anymore. Rumors sprout like mushrooms after rain. One says the queen is with child. Again, another says she's planning to flee. A third claims the king has drawn up annulment papers. None of them make sense, but that hardly matters. In the palace, it's never about truth. It's about who believes what, and how loudly. And here, within the thick stone womb of the queen's chambers, you begin to notice something different. She's not afraid anymore, not even careful. She moves with the unbothered grace of someone who knows the walls have eyes and doesn't care if they see. She spends hours reading now, mostly law and scripture, occasionally pausing to jot something down. Once, you catch her muttering under her breath, "Every vow may be undone, if improperly sworn." It sticks in your mind. You're called into the sewing room in the afternoon, not to mend a gown, but to be measured. No explanation, just your arms, your waist, your neck. The seamstress won't say why. 3 days later, a simple dark dress arrives in your chamber. High collar, modest sleeves, unadorned. It's a uniform, but not a servant's. You're being recostumed for a new role, something between maid and shadow. You wear it without question. Historians still argue whether royal women could initiate political schemes of their own, or if they simply reacted to male decisions. Some queens, like Elizabeth Furr, ruled outright. Others, like Empress Matilda, fought for power but were written off as unnatural. But within the bedchamber, women could operate differently. They didn't need a crown. They needed patience and presence. You think of that as you press lavender water into the queen's sheets and find a new note hidden beneath the mattress. It's folded into a swan. You don't open it. That's not your job. You move it to the drawer beneath her prayer book. No one taught you this routine. You just do it because the queen trusts you now, not as a friend, not even as a servant, as an instrument. Tonight, she asks you to bring her comb, not the silver one, the old one, the one with 3 broken teeth, buried beneath the powder box. You hand it over. She holds it for a long time, not using it, just remembering. Then she says, "My mother said to keep 2 things in life, one for show and one for war." She places the comb on the table. "I'm keeping both now." You're not sure if she's talking about people or objects or herself, but the line haunts you. You begin noticing how many things in the chamber come in twos. 2 prayer books, 2 sets of slippers, 2 combs, 2 candlesticks, but only one ever lit. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a twin. You hear from the scullery girl that Lady Sabina hasn't been seen in days. Not sick, not dismissed, just quiet. Her rooms are locked, her gown sent out to be aired. The implication is clear. She's no longer the center of attention. And when power abandons someone in court, it doesn't do so slowly. It evaporates. One day, you're a rising star. The next, you're asking stable boys if the kitchens still need help. The queen, meanwhile, glows. not with joy, with clarity. She wears the violet ribbon again, despite the scandal, or maybe because of it. She writes more notes, some in English, some in Latin, some in codes you don't recognize. She has you burn the drafts. You do so carefully, always fanning the ashes into the fireplace, watching them vanish into smoke. You begin to notice the rhythm of her nights, the pattern of her sighs, the minute shifts in the way she folds her hands before sleep. Some nights, she leaves her hair down. Others, she braids it tightly. You wonder what each choice means. Then, one night, she tells you, "When my hair is down," she says, "I want to be underestimated." And when it's braided, she looks at you over her shoulder. "I want them to worry." You memorize this too. That same night, while you're folding linens, a page boy delivers a message for Lady Annalise. You take it. He doesn't notice the queen watching from the reflection of her mirror. She says, calmly, "Don't give it to her yet." You freeze. "Your Majesty?" She stands, walks over, and plucks the note from your fingers, breaks the seal, reads, then burns it. "Tell her it never arrived," she says. You nod. The page boy is already gone. No one will question it. But you do. Later, when the queen has fallen asleep and the chamber is quiet, you sit by the fire and think, this isn't just survival anymore. This is conquest. You remember how timid she was when you first arrived. The quiet sighs, the long silences, the folded hands. Now, she controls information, manages appearances, directs rumors like arrows. You think of Catherine of Braganza, mocked for her infertility, but quietly responsible for the cultural exchange between England and Portugal, tea, porcelain, even Bombay. No one called her powerful at the time, but centuries later, historians call her pivotal. Maybe this queen won't be remembered either, but that doesn't mean she isn't changing everything. And you were once just a girl with a basin. Now you're part of a machine, a very quiet, very dangerous machine. The next morning, a new servant is posted outside the queen's chambers. A young man, too polished, too still. You see the mark on his glove, the king's crest. And just like that, you know she's being watched again. You don't say anything. But that evening, when the queen says, "Is the fire warm enough?" you answer, "No, Majesty. Too many ears tonight." She smiles, then pulls her shawl tighter and says nothing more. You wake before the bells. No roosters, no clatter, no cook fire noises, just a sharp stillness in the air. Something's coming. You can feel it. In the bedchamber, the queen is already awake, seated at her writing desk, wrapped in a fur-trimmed robe. A single candle burns beside her, casting slow shadows across her profile. Her pen moves carefully, methodically. When you enter, she doesn't look up. She simply says, "Put on your shoes. We're walking." You obey, dressing quickly. Not your usual clogs, but soft-soled slippers, the kind that make no sound against stone floors. She hands you a folded shawl, her own. You drape it around your shoulders like armor. Then, without a word to Lady Annalise or anyone, you leave the chamber. The hall is silent, no guards at the junction, no pages sweeping the floor. You descend a narrow servant stairwell, spiral and damp, and exit into the herb garden where cold morning dew clings to every leaf like breath. You're not sure where you're going until she leads you to the far west wall, a place most courtiers forget exists. There's a disused prayer oratory here, half collapsed, but still sheltering a few cracked pews and a statue of St. Margaret with one eye worn away by time. The Queen sits on a bench. You wait. Do you know why they placed the Queen's rooms on the eastern side of the palace? She asks. You shake your head. Symbolism, the rising sun, renewal, warmth. She touches the edge of the bench. But the west is where the light fades, where truth lingers longer. You sit beside her. Then she says it plainly. I'm not going to win this by waiting. You glance sideways. Win. What? She smiles, faint and tired. The game they've all forgotten I'm playing. That day, the entire palace shifts like a house trying to hide a broken beam. Schedules change. The king departs for a hawking expedition with Lord Broderick. Lady Annalise suddenly claims a migraine and retreats to her rooms, and the royal physician insists on examining the queen. Despite not being summoned, you're ordered to wait outside the chamber during the physician's visit, but through the door, you hear his voice rise. It's not a question of suggestion. Your Majesty, it's a question of allegiance. Her voice, calm as linen folded in thirds. Then I suggest you choose yours wisely. Later, you help her undress for her bath. She removes her outer robe and exposes her back, lined with red indentations from her corset. You fetch warm water, pour it slowly over her shoulders. She exhales, but her face never softens. Do you think people remember how it began? She asks suddenly. You hesitate. What began? All of this. The tension. The little wars. The long silences. You shake your head. No, she agrees. They only remember the explosion, and she leans back into the water, eyes closed. Historians still argue whether women like her, quiet queens, less flashy, less dramatic, truly mattered. But that's because historians like neat stories, flashy downfalls. They don't like the slow simmer of influence, the kind that never writes its own name. In your time here, you've watched the queen shift from accessory to operator. She doesn't throw tantrums. She plants seeds. You've watched her remove people from her presence simply by giving them nothing to do. You've seen her lose interest in a person and watch that person slowly wither, socially, politically, physically. It's terrifying. It's impressive. That night, a strange scent lingers in the room. Not poison, not perfume, something metallic. It's in the queen's hair, clinging to the comb you used earlier. You sniff again. Iron. You find a single cut on her scalp, shallow, weeping slightly. You dab it with rose water. She doesn't flinch. They're getting desperate. She says softly. Who? She doesn't answer, just turns her face toward the canopy and closes her eyes. The next morning, the guards at her door have changed. The young one with the king's crest is gone, replaced by an older, bored-looking man who keeps asking which corridor leads to the kitchens. Later, you find out the young one fell ill overnight. No one mentions his name. At supper, the queen eats only broth. Her appetite is still fading, but you notice she's wearing her old ring again, the one with the enamel chipped off the side. She hasn't worn it in months, not since the last royal argument. You don't ask, but she catches you looking. She says, "They gave me this the night I was crowned." Then, after a pause, "I wore it every day until I realized what it meant." What does it mean? That I am expected to endure, not to act. She sets the ring on the table. But now I do both. You wrap the ring in silk and place it in her drawer, That evening, she tells you, if anything happens, you must leave the palace. You blink. Where would I go? To my cousin's estate. They'll take you in. You shake your head. I'm not going anywhere. She studies you for a moment, then she nods. You'll need to be braver than I was. You help her into bed, fluff the pillows, smooth the coverlet. 6 inches, always. But tonight, she stops you. Fold it back a little further, she says. You pause. Why? She smiles, eyes glinting in the candlelight. Because tonight, I expect company. You wait by the hearth. The Queen's chamber is quiet, heavy with the kind of silence that comes before storms. She's lying in bed, not sleeping, but pretending well. The blanket is folded 8 inches back instead of 6. A message, a trap, an invitation. Maybe all 3. The candles are trimmed low. The scent of lavender and beeswax mingles with something new tonight. Neroli, you think. A flower associated with brides and peace. She chose it on purpose. You sit on your stool, hands folded, eyes on the fire, and you listen. The knock comes just after the bells mark midnight. Not loud, not tentative. A soft, practiced rhythm. 3 quick taps, then 2 slower ones. You glance at the Queen. She says nothing. You rise and unlock the door. It's Lord Broderick. He's alone. That's not how it's supposed to be. Lords don't visit unescorted. Not here. Not at this hour. He steps inside like he owns the floor beneath him. His eyes flick to you, then dismiss you entirely. I need a word, he says to the Queen, already moving toward the bed. She doesn't rise. And I need an empire. Let's both be disappointed. He stops at the foot of the bed. I'm here as a friend. No, she replies calmly. You're here because you think I'm cornered. He moves closer, lowering his voice. There are rumors of letters, arrangements, clandestine meetings. Shocking, she murmurs. People having thoughts. How dangerous. You're frozen near the dresser, unsure whether to stay or flee, but her glance keeps you there. You forget. Broderick says, I helped you once, and I thanked you. She replies, once. He steps even closer. I could still be useful. And yet, she replies, here you are, in my bedchamber, with no witnesses, saying things you hope will be forgotten. That hangs in the air for a long moment. Then she adds, tell me, what exactly do you want, cousin? The word cousin stings. You can see it in his mouth, which tightens ever so slightly. He says, I want to know if you intend to challenge the king's authority. And that's when she sits up, not fast, not aggressively, just calmly, deliberately, like a chess queen sliding across the board. You mean, she says, will I allow the king to fall on his own sword, or will I hand him another? He says nothing. She smiles faintly. You've already chosen your side. You're just here to confirm that I've chosen mine. He doesn't deny it. And that, you realize, is his mistake. She leans forward. The next time you enter my chamber uninvited, I'll make sure you leave with fewer fingers. He blinks. You almost smile. Then she adds, you may go. He hesitates, just for a heartbeat, then turns on his heel and exits without another word. You relock the door behind him. She sighs and reclines again. Well, she says, that was moderately fun. You're still holding your breath? I didn't know he'd come, she says. You look at her. Then why the extra fold? She closes her eyes. Because I needed to know who was watching. Historians still argue whether women in royal households orchestrated their own political traps or simply reacted to male decisions. But you've seen enough now to know the queen doesn't react. She anticipates. She plans 3 steps ahead. And when the rest of the palace plays chess, she plays cards, quietly, close to the chest, with a dagger under the table. The next day, she asks for her ledger, not the one with accounts or gowns or feast planning. The other one, the small black one she keeps behind the false panel in the drawer. You bring it out, wrapped in plain cloth. She opens it to a bookmarked page. It's a list of names, servants, nobles, visitors, with annotations in her own hand. B. Trusts too easily. Useful only when watched. S. Pretends to be neutral. Isn't. A. More dangerous than she looks. Doesn't sleep deeply. E. Loyal. Possibly naive. She means you. She adds a new line at the bottom. Lord Broderick. Overconfident. Predictable. Easy to provoke. Then she closes the book. You ask carefully, what happens now? She stretches. Now we wait. He'll report what he saw. And the king will do what kings always do. Underestimate the quiet woman in the dark room. You nod. That night, she doesn't ask for her second pillow. She tells you to remove it. I'm tired of staging scenes, she says. You strip it from the bed. Leave the candle burning, she adds. Let them wonder if I'm still awake. You obey, and as you settle on your stool, she says, you know they'll come for me eventually. You look at her. Do they know what you're capable of? She smiles faintly. Not yet, but you do, because you've watched her turn servants into messengers, gowns into symbols, blankets into signals, and tonight, as you pull the fire guard closed and dim the room into shadows, you realize this bed is no longer a prison, it's a throne. The bed has grown colder, not in temperature, though the night air creeping through the stone makes your fingers ache, but in what it represents. No second pillow, no hopeful glances toward the door, no more pretending. The queen has stopped performing. Cha. And that's when people start to panic. It begins with subtle shifts, a flurry of inquiries from the steward's office about the queen's sleeping habits, a sudden inspection of chamber locks, the return of the king's physician, uninvited, this time requesting to examine her eyes, her pulse, her temperament. He's testing for something, madness, maybe hysteria, the kinds of words men reach for when a woman doesn't weep at the right moments. The queen submits, just barely. She lets him take her hand, then says, softly but clearly, if you're hoping to diagnose rebellion, you'll have better luck in your own wing. You nearly choke, holding in a laugh. Later that evening, you find a note tucked under your folded shift. It isn't signed, but the handwriting is familiar. Meet me where the lilies rot. No words, just eyes. You know exactly what it means. You slip out just before the bells, wrapping yourself in your plainer cloak. No servant is questioned if she carries laundry and moves with purpose. That's what you do, past the kitchens, through the silent corridor near the stables, and into the south garden. The lily bed was once a royal wedding gift. Now it's overgrown, half dead, swarming with weeds. Lady Annalise is already there. She doesn't speak, just hands you a satchel. Inside, a ring of keys, a sealed parchment, and a brooch, the queen's brooch. She won't leave through the front, Annalise whispers. If it comes to that, you nod. She trusts you more than me now. She adds, not bitter, not angry, just resigned. You should ask questions, but you don't, because you already know the answers. The queen is preparing for more than gossip. She's preparing for removal. Historians still debate whether queens were ever forcibly sent to convents against their will. Some say yes, particularly when they became political liabilities. Others insist the process was always voluntary, though it's hard to call a choice voluntary when it comes at the end of a dagger. That night, you sleep lightly, one slipper on. In the early hours, the page boy knocks. Summons from the king, he mutters. The queen's to present herself, dressed, alone, alone. You help her dress, not in morning black, not in bright defiance, a muted gray. She chooses her older gown, the one with the frayed hem that says, I am not here for show. She does not speak. You hand her the brooch. She pins it on without comment. Then she walks. You follow only to the chamber door. She glances at you once before the guards flank her. Leave the fire lit, she says. The door closes. Hours pass. You keep the fire going. You tidy things that don't need tidying. You turn the bed and return it. You fold and refold the linens. You do not eat. Finally, footsteps, heavy ones. The door opens, but it's not her. It's a man in court livery, bearing a message. She is to be relocated, for her health, to the northern apartments, quiet, isolated, far from the king's wing. You ask when she'll return. He does not answer. You're allowed to pack her things, but only what is listed. The ledger is not on the list. You slip it under your apron anyway. You carry her comb, her ring, one shoe that never fit right, and her prayer book. When you arrive at the new chamber, she is already there, sitting by the window. No guards, no attendants, just stone walls and quiet. I thought they'd try poison, she says. You place her belongings on the table. She does not move. They'll wait now, she says. Let time dull the court's memory. Let the fire die out. You say, and then? She smiles. Then they'll realize the fire is under the floorboards. That night, you help her into a narrower bed. It's harder, the pillows flatter, the windows draftier, but she sleeps better. You sit beside her, a candle guttering low between you. She says, they always forget the women who sleep beside power. You nod. They forget who gathers the sheets, who carries the letters, who sets the traps. She closes her eyes. And they always forget to check under the mattress. She's asleep within minutes. You stay awake, because if they come again, this time with ropes or priests or worse, someone will need to light the signal, and you are not a servant anymore. You are the queen's last defense. The northern chambers are colder, quieter, lonelier. No music from the court, no rush of gowns down polished corridors. Only the wind sighing through stone and the faint creak of beams above your heads. You begin to understand why this wing was abandoned. It is not a place for queens. It is a place for the forgotten. But the queen is not forgotten. Not yet. Visitors are restricted now. No one important has come. Just you. The physician comes once a day, but only under supervision. He takes her pulse, asks her to read aloud. It's theater, probing for madness, for any excuse to declare her unfit. She humors him. When he leaves, she says, if I pretend long enough, they'll grow bored and look elsewhere. That's when we strike. You realize she's not waiting for rescue. She's waiting for silence, because silence is where her work thrives. You're her only attendant now. You light the fire, you wash the linens, you bring her writing supplies, not fresh paper, but scraps sewn into hems, tucked into curtain folds, layered behind fireplace bricks. You become part of the walls. She writes sparingly, carefully, mostly in cipher now, simple substitutions that would look like grocery lists to anyone else. You know the key. It's stitched into your sleeve. Historians still debate whether royal women in exile lost all influence. Some certainly did, walled away, made into ghosts. But others adapted. Some ruled from afar through loyal servants, secret letters, clever marriages. Power doesn't vanish. It just changes form. One morning, you find a torn page under the pillow. The king has asked for a new council. They meet at dawn. Ask Eliza to listen. You memorize it. Burn it. You know Eliza. She's a laundress now. But her brother scrubs floors in the council chamber. Later that week, a message returns, tucked into a bundle of socks. They argue over war. The queen's name was not spoken. Yet. That word is everything. The queen listens closely as you report. Then she says, "Then we still have time." You ask, "Time for what?" She replies, "To remind them why I matter." The next day, she sends you to the cathedral. You're to light a candle in her name. Not for piety, for presence. She knows the gossip will start again. Why is her maid at the cathedral? Is she dying? Is she expecting? The palace breathes in stories. She feeds it the kind she can control. And they take the bait. The whispers return before you do. You overhear a steward muttering to a page, "If she's praying again, it must mean something. Maybe repentance." You smile. She was never repenting. She was signaling. That night, she reads aloud while you sew. Her voice is soft, the words slow. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. She pauses. You know that line? You nod. People always miss the point. It's not about dying. It's about not knowing what comes after. She closes the book. But I do. You don't ask what she means. But later, as you bank the fire, you find something behind the grate, a package wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, coins, documents, an ivory seal you've only seen used by royal ministers. You don't tell anyone. You tuck it behind the drawer where the prayer book used to be. It's not your first secret. It won't be your last. Days pass. The king's name is no longer spoken in the northern chamber. Not by her, not by you. Not by the new guard who sometimes nods when you bring supper. Instead, you speak in symbols. She's cold means she needs the red ink. She slept late means a letter has been sent. She's not hungry means don't answer any questions today. You become fluent in this new language. One day, she asks for lavender oil, not because she likes the scent, because the ambassador from the southern provinces is visiting, and his late wife wore it. That's the kind of move she makes now. Small, forgettable, disarming. She doesn't need to be remembered. She needs to be misremembered, as weak, as lost, as defeated. Only you know the truth. She is none of those things. You see it in the way she watches the fire, in how she ties her robe with deliberate precision. In the one corner of her bed she never sleeps in. That space, still untouched, is for the future, because she's coming back, not with trumpets or parades, not as a queen in procession, but as the quiet presence who never truly left. You smooth the sheets, fold the blanket, 8 inches tonight, She nods. The new code, because someone is coming, and they won't be expecting her to be ready. The snow arrives quietly, like everything else in the northern chambers. You wake to a pale stillness outside the leaded windows. The garden is gone, blanketed in white. The sky is the color of unspoken things. And inside, the queen sits at her table, brushing crumbs into her palm with the side of a spoon. She hasn't spoken yet this morning. That's not unusual now. Some days are all silence and paper, others, all whispers and glances. You've learned to follow the rhythm. Today, she gestures to the wardrobe. You understand. She wants her old gown, the deep burgundy one with the tiny rip in the hem, the one she wore during her first court appearance as queen. You fetch it, brush it smooth, hold it up. She stares at it for a moment, then says, I thought I looked so powerful in this. You don't know how to answer. So she answers herself. But I was just decorative, useful, pretty enough to be tolerated, silent enough to be admired. She slips the gown over her shift. You fasten the back. The fabric still fits, though it hangs a little looser at the collarbones. Her skin is pale against the velvet. She looks at herself in the mirror, tilts her head. Will they recognize me? She asks. You say, they'll pretend not to. That's how they protect themselves. She smiles faintly. Then we'll make that impossible. This afternoon, she writes 5 letters. Each is sealed with a ribbon the color of ash. You deliver them to 5 very different places: the cathedral, the armory, the kitchens, the East Wing laundry, and the archives. In each location, someone nods, says nothing, and disappears through a different door. The queen has no army, but she has a memory. And memory, when placed in the right hands, becomes a sword. Historians still argue whether women in isolation could influence state affairs. The records rarely name the messengers, rarely trace the missing documents. But, exile didn't silence her. It sharpened her. She no longer has to pretend to be obedient. Everyone already believes she's broken. That's her freedom. The fire crackles steadily that night. You're darning one of her gloves by candlelight when she says, there's a moment before a room turns, before power changes hands. You look up. It's quiet, she says. Always. Like the breath before the flame goes out. You nod. I've heard that breath. She adds, twice now. You ask, what happens after? She replies, it depends on who's listening. She reaches for her prayer book, still blank on the inside, every page cut and hollowed to hold folded letters, snippets of maps, an old wax seal. She hands it to you. If I don't come back from the chambers tomorrow, take this to the stables. Find the boy with the crooked tooth. You grip the book tightly. But you will come back. You say. She doesn't answer. Instead, she rises and opens the drawer beneath the hearth. She pulls out a brooch in the shape of a swan, one you've never seen. This was my mother's, she says. She wore it the day she was banished. You whisper, did she survive? She sent me this 3 years later, she says. That was her answer. You help her pin it above her heart. You think about Lady Sabina, once radiant, now vanished. You think of Lord Broderick, silent lately, his name no longer whispered even in scandal. You think of the king, rarely seen, rumors circling like vultures. The palace is shifting again, and the queen is standing still at its center. That night, a different guard posts outside the door, older, lean, scar across the cheek. You recognize him. He once served on the southern battlements. He nods at you, briefly, in the way soldiers do before storms. You light only one candle before bed. You smooth the sheets, fold the blanket, 8 inches, the signal. The queen settles in without a word. Just before extinguishing the light, she says, "If they ask where I am, tell them I've gone to be remembered." You wake before her, dress quickly, the gown, the gloves, the book hidden under your cloak, but when she steps into the hall, you see it plainly. She's not hiding anymore. Her hair is unbound, long, silvered at the ends, framing her face like a banner. She carries no jewels, no crown, but still looks taller than anyone else in the corridor. People will talk. You hope they talk loudly. She turns once at the stairway, looks at you. You bow your head. You do not cry. You are no longer her maid. You are her accomplice. You are her echo. You are her contingency plan. The palace is unusually loud this morning, not with music, not with laughter, but with footsteps, swift ones, purposeful. You hear boots crossing thresholds, muffled commands barked behind doors, doors opening that haven't opened in months. The queen hasn't returned. You sit by the hearth, the fire barely holding. The prayer book, her prayer book, is on your lap, still unopened. You haven't moved since she left. No one has summoned you. That's the first sign that something's wrong. By the time the bells ring midday, there are whispers, not rumors, strategies. People are choosing positions, like dancers preparing a final bow. Lord Broderick is seen exiting the council chambers, pale and tight-lipped. Lady Annalise is gone, vanished, her room sealed. A boy from the scullery tells you he saw servants carrying out trunks before dawn. The Queen's wing, the northern chamber, is no longer under restriction. It is now off limits. You are no longer mentioned. Not even in the daily logs. You're meant to disappear. You don't. Instead, you move, slowly, carefully. You light the fire in the Queen's abandoned hearth. You arrange the bed, not for comfort, but for message, 6 inches, folded perfectly. You leave the swan brooch on the pillow. You eat nothing that day. Historians still argue whether queens disappeared on purpose or were erased by others. Some cite political necessity. Others blame melancholy or frailty. But sometimes, the queen orchestrates her own vanishing. Sometimes, silence is a form of violence, and the silence is deafening. You deliver the hollowed-out prayer book to the stables. The boy with the crooked tooth takes it, nods, and vanishes without a word. You don't follow, because now your job is to stay, to look ordinary. You sweep, you sew, you nod when spoken to. You become background again, but you hear everything. The king is ill, not grievously, not obviously, but enough that he misses council meetings, enough that his food tray is returned half full, enough that he's sent for his mother's old chaplain. The court starts looking for a new direction, and yet no one mentions the queen, until someone does. It's a slip of the tongue? Really. One of the new advisors, in a heated conversation in the library hallway, says, "Well, she never would have allowed it," then freezes. No one speaks for a full breath. Then the sentence resumes. She, meaning the Dowager Queen. Of course. Of course. But they meant your queen. They always do. The queen becomes an absence that shapes everything. The court shifts around her shape, even when pretending not to. A week passes. Then 10 days. Then, on a morning thick with fog, you find something strange. On the dresser in the old bedchamber, where no one is supposed to enter anymore, a ring. Simple. Worn. The enamel chipped. Her ring. You touch it, and something cold runs up your spine. Someone has been here. You search the chamber. No sign of intrusion, except the firewood is fresh. Someone has stoked the hearth. You sit on the stool beside the fire, heart racing. You wait, but no one comes. That night, you burn nothing. You write nothing. You sleep fully dressed. The next morning, a page boy delivers a message to your quarters. No seal, no name. Inside, a single line. You did not fold the blanket tonight. Are you losing faith? You close the note slowly and smile. She's alive. She's here. Maybe not in the palace. Maybe not yet, but nearby. Watching, listening, still choosing the moment, and waiting for her chambermaid, her accomplice, to hold the door open when that moment comes. You return to the chamber. You sweep the floor. You relight the fire. You fluff the pillows. You fold the blanket. 8 inches. Fog clings to the palace for days. It rolls in through the windows, nestles in the courtyard hedges, and seeps into your bones like a whispered warning. Visibility is low, and people walk slower, speak softer, as if the world has shrunk down to the size of the throne room. And, still, no queen. But now they're speaking her name again, carefully, like a fragile wine glass, liable to break if held too tightly. You hear it first from the steward's lips, murmured during an inventory audit. If Her Majesty were here, she'd never allow this linen count to be off. Her Majesty, present tense. Later, the head of kitchens jokes. The Queen always insisted the bread arrive hot. Not the late Queen, not the vanished Queen. The Queen. You keep your head down, but you hear everything, because silence, once learned, becomes a weapon. Historians still argue whether queens could haunt a court without dying first, whether their absence was more powerful than their presence. Your queen proves it true daily. She is nowhere, and yet, everywhere, the king remains cloistered. You hear mutterings of an illness of the blood. You hear dizzy spells, fits, visions. No one dares speak of madness. That would require action. But whatever afflicts him, it grows stronger by the day, and the court begins to lean, subtly, toward someone else. Someone not there, but not gone. Someone whispered about behind embroidered fans and goblets of warm wine. You return to the northern chamber each morning now. It hasn't been forbidden again, but it hasn't been reassigned either. It's a dead space, officially, unofficially. It pulses. And the blanket, always folded, always 8 inches. One morning, the old guard with the scar returns, the one who once flanked her door. He nods at you as if no time has passed. You don't speak, but you leave the door ajar just a little longer that day. That afternoon, a delivery arrives. Firewood. Unusual. The north chamber is supposedly empty. You accept it without question. Inside one of the logs, you find a slip of paper, burnt at one end, folded tight. You coax it open over the hearth. It reads, "The birds are watching the wrong field. Stay still." You burn it immediately. That night, you dream of her. Not like a memory, like a warning. She stands in the corridor holding her prayer book, open and blank. She doesn't speak, but her eyes fix on yours like a command. You wake with the name of a date in your head. The day of St. Agnes. It's in 3 days. You know it has meaning, but not why. So you ask the laundry girl, Eliza, who's better with calendars than saints. St. Agnes? She repeats. Why? That's the day girls put bay leaves under their pillows to dream of their future husbands. You blink. That's it? She shrugs. That's all I know. You thank her. But later that night, as you strip the queen's bed for laundering, you find something tucked under the mattress, not bay leaves, a folded note, written in your queen's hand. I do not dream of husbands. I dream of restoration. Have you prepared the bed? On the day of St. Agnes, they will be looking the other way. Your breath catches. It's a signal, a date. Something is coming, and you are not ready. You begin your preparations. You write nothing down. You sew an old seal into your apron lining. You clean the queen's old slippers and press them flat. You repolish her comb, the one with the 3 broken teeth. You iron the burgundy gown, not to wear, to offer. Because when she returns, and now, you are sure she will, she must step back into the role as if she never left. You will make it so. The palace is tense the next day. Rumors of a nobleman being arrested. The ambassador from the southern provinces leaves early. For health reasons. The king's physician begins praying in public. People pretend not to notice, but they notice, and the queen's name appears again, this time on the lips of a child in the hallway. Where did she go? The girl asks her nurse. She's resting, the nurse says. Queens need a rest before they shine. Out of the mouths of babes, you set the chamber just so. You warm the sheets with coals wrapped in linen. You place the comb beside the mirror. You arrange the brooch, swan side up, on the pillow. And you fold the blanket, 8 inches, because tomorrow is St. Agnes's day, and tonight may be the last night the palace breathes quietly. You wake before dawn on St. Agnes's day, not to bells, not to footsteps, to stillness, thick, pregnant stillness, the kind that hangs before thunder, before collapse, the kind of silence that waits for you to break it. You slip out of bed already dressed. No apron today. You wear the plain dark dress again, the one they never quite figured out, the one that lets you pass without question. The northern chamber is colder than usual. The fire has gone out. You relight it, not for warmth, for signal. You open the shutters halfway, just as instructed. You fold the blanket, 8 inches, then you wait. Outside, the palace begins its morning rituals. The cathedral bells chime the 6th hour. Kitchen smoke rises. The scullery girls scrub. The pages fumble. The guards yawn at their posts. But you notice what doesn't happen. No summons from the king. No council convened. No new visitors announced, so they're waiting to know. They're waiting, only they don't know what for. You check the hallway. The scarred guard is there again, nodding once, and inside the chamber, nothing. No message, no returned slipper, no hidden note. Just you and the room until mid-morning. That's when she arrives. No trumpets, no procession, just a faint knock, 3 fingers on the panel, then the door opens, and she steps inside, hair braided, shoulders back, eyes clear, no crown, no jewels, only her. You don't bow, you can't move. She smiles faintly. I was beginning to think you'd gone soft. You whisper. I folded the blanket. She crosses to the fire, warms her hands. It's colder than I remembered. You fetch the burgundy gown without being asked. She lets you help her dress. Her fingers tremble only once, as you fasten the collar. No words are needed. She moves to the mirror, takes the comb, uses it. Then she turns. "How do I look?" she asks. "Like someone who was never gone." She nods. And then she waits. You hear it before you see it, the echo of boots, but not the heavy stomp of guards. These are faster. You move to the door just as it opens. Lady Annalise enters, hair tucked beneath her hood, cheeks flushed from cold or nerves. Behind her, 2 kitchen boys, a laundress, and the crooked-toothed stable hand. They form a loose circle around the queen. No kneeling, no speeches, just presence. Lady Annalise removes a scroll from her sleeve and hands it to the queen. "It worked," she says simply. "The seal held." The queen unrolls it. You catch glimpses, not laws, not orders, names, signatures, a pact. These are not the powerful, these are the invisible, and they are ready. Historians rarely record these moments. There are no records of what happened next, no trumpet fanfare, no decree, but the palace felt it, the change, because within the hour, the southern wing is locked and cleared. 2 advisors leave the court for their health. A priest is seen burning letters in the courtyard. And most importantly, the king is moved to a different chamber. No announcement, no explanation, but everyone knows. They feel the bed shift beneath them. That night, you help the queen into her own bed for the first time in weeks. She sits for a long time before lying down. "I never liked this mattress," she murmurs. "Too soft." You ask, "Will you sleep?" She turns to you. "I don't sleep anymore," she says. I wait. You smooth the sheet, fold the blanket. She watches you. 6 inches, not 8, not tonight. You dim the candles, leaving one lit. At the door, you turn. She hasn't closed her eyes, and you know she's listening. The next morning, there are flowers. That's how you know the palace has changed. A dozen bouquets arrive at the queen's chamber door. Wild roses, cut hyacinths, lilies wrapped in ribbons. No senders' names, no messages, just gestures, half apologies, half insurance policies. You arrange them in the copper vases the queen never liked. She watches silently as you work. The fire burns low behind her. Her reflection flickers in the window glass. Half shadow, half statue. "Do they think I'm impressed?" she asks, not unkindly. "No, Your Majesty," you reply. "They think you're dangerous." She smiles. "Good." By afternoon, courtiers begin trickling back into the queen's presence. Not the important ones. Not yet. These are the clever middle ranks. The ones who know how to sniff which direction power is leaning. They arrive with carefully rehearsed condolences, memories of loyalty, small household concerns. She grants short audiences, says little, listens more. And you take notes. In your head, because every sentence, every glance is a test. That evening, she receives a formal invitation to attend Mass beside the king. She doesn't tear it up. She folds it in half, sets it beside her wine, and says, "He must be afraid." You dare to ask, what if it's genuine? She replies, "Then he'll wait for me to come." She does not go. Historians still argue about the nature of royal reconciliation. Some claim it was always transactional, a show for the people. Others believe in genuine moments of peace between rulers and their consorts, but very few ever ask the women how they felt about it, because queens are expected to forgive, to return, to smile. And this queen takes her time. The following morning, you're sent to the council chamber, not to observe, but to prepare. Cushions, water, ink, all precise, all silent. You work as instructed. And when Lord Broderick enters, he stops. You don't look at him, but you hear him mutter, "Even now." He leaves before the council convenes. He doesn't return. Later that day, his name is struck from the household rolls. No explanation, only a silence where he used to be. Back in the chamber, the queen is braiding her hair. You offer to help, but she declines. "I want them to see the lines in my arms," she says. "I want them to remember I wasn't idle." You know what she means? Her hands have grown rougher in these months, no longer soft with ceremony. They look like useful hands now. She asked for her writing box. You bring it. She writes for hours. You don't peek, but you hear her murmur names, some familiar, some not. Occasionally, she chuckles. Once, she sighs. When she's done, she hands you a single folded note. "Take this to the cook." You blink. "The cook?" She nods. "And ask him what he remembers about lemon peel." You don't ask questions. But when you deliver it, the cook goes very still. Then he nods and says, "Tell her I still have the jar." You do. She smiles and says, "Then let's begin." You don't know what they're planning, but you know this. It involves memory. Lemon peel was once used to test for poison, mixed with salt. It reacts, faintly, but reliably. A trick the old Queen's Guard used. That night, when you light the candles, she tells you, "They will offer me sweetness. I will taste it first." You fluff the pillows. She watches you carefully, then asks, "Do you know why I let them exile me?" You shake your head. She says, "Because I wanted them to believe I had no allies." "Do you?" She raises an eyebrow. "Do you think you're the only one folding blankets?" You sleep on your stool again that night, not because you must, because you want to. Something's coming. You can feel it in your teeth. And as the moon rises high and the palace settles into uneasy quiet, the queen speaks once more, softly, like a lullaby. "I dreamed of fire last night," she says. You lean in. "Not destruction," she clarifies. "Warmth." Then she adds, "They think I want vengeance." You ask, "Don't you?" She closes her eyes. "No, I want memory, because memory burns longer." You bank the fire, and let that truth settle like ash. The feast is announced 3 days later, a celebration of health and unity. The invitation says, "The king will appear. The queen, if she chooses, will be seated at his right. There will be musicians, dancers, imported wine, peacocks, probably, or some equally silly bird." You read the announcement aloud to her over breakfast. She's buttering bread slowly, methodically, as though it's an act of negotiation. "They want a portrait," she mutters. You glance up. "A what?" "This feast. This appearance. It's not reconciliation." She sets down the knife. "It's a painting they want to hang in everyone's memory." You nod. "Will you go?" She lifts her cup, takes a sip, and says, "Only if I get to choose the frame." Preparations begin that very afternoon. You are handed back your apron for optics. "She must be seen as returned to routine," says the steward. "Let's not make a display of new loyalties." He doesn't know how old your loyalty is. The palace pulses with anticipation. Rumors swell. She's going to bow. She's going to kneel. She's going to speak Latin. She's going to smile. She's going to forgive him. Someone whispers. You don't correct them. Let them hope. Let them make themselves soft. Let them arrive unarmed. Historians often mistake these moments. They call them restorations. Returns to favor, as if a woman reappearing means she has surrendered. But you've seen the truth. Absence was her armor. And this appearance? This is the unsheathing. You help her dress on the morning of the feast, not in burgundy, not in mourning, but in gold, not bright gold, not shiny, a quiet, warm gold, the color of wheat before harvest, or candlelight reflected in brass. Her sleeves are embroidered with twisted vines, her collar lined in pale pearls. She wears no crown, only the swan brooch. She turns in the mirror. Too much? You smile. Just enough to blind them slowly. She nods. And then, for the first time in weeks, she walks to the central wing. Heads turn before she reaches the corridor. Voices hush. Even the stone seems to hold its breath. The throne room has been dressed like a bride. Silk banners, polished marble, the king's crest on every surface. Courtiers form two neat lines. The king waits near the dais, stiff as a statue. His eyes are dull, but his chin is lifted. He doesn't smile. Neither does she. They do not touch. They do not bow. They simply sit. And when the music begins, the courtiers relax. They believe it has worked, that she is playing her part again, but you're watching her hands. She doesn't eat the fruit. She doesn't sip the red wine. She waits. And when she speaks, at last, it is with warmth, but not for him, for the musicians, for the children presented with garlands, for the cooks who appear from the side doors in their best tunics. Never for him. She thanks everyone, and in doing so, reminds them that they exist because she noticed. The king speaks after. It's a short speech, tired, almost brittle. He calls for unity. He toasts to peace. He raises his goblet. The queen does not lift hers. Instead, she says softly, "Peace comes after truth," and sets the goblet down. Everyone hears it. No one speaks of it, but they remember. Later, in the chamber, she removes the gown carefully. You help fold it. The fabric still warm from her skin. She says nothing for a long time. Then, he has 3 weeks. Then they'll stop looking at him. You nod. What happens after that? She exhales. Then I will be the only one they can see. She looks tired, but not weak. She looks used, as if something powerful has passed through her and left her bones singing. You prepare the bed, fold the blanket, 6 inches. She sits by the fire, unbraiding her hair slowly. You know, she says, they'll rewrite this. Rewrite what? This moment. This return. They'll say I smiled. They'll say I wept. They'll say he forgave me. You ask, what will you say? She looks at you. I will say I survived. You dim the lights. The room softens. The fire sighs. You take your place on the stool, and as her breathing slows, you realize something. This isn't the end of the story. It's the quiet beginning of hers. The queen rises before you on the final morning. You find her seated by the hearth, not dressed yet, just wrapped in a linen shift, feet bare against the cold tile. The light outside is soft, Not quite dawn, the sky still undecided between gray and gold. She doesn't speak as you enter, just nods once. The room feels different, not heavier, not lighter, just finished, somehow, like a page turned cleanly. You begin your routine, warming the basin, brushing out the bedding, laying out the day's gown. She watches you closely. You never asked what comes next, she says. You glance up. Would you tell me if I did? She smiles. No. You both laugh, briefly, gently. The sound feels almost sacred in this quiet chamber where so many secrets once curled between folds of linen. I had a dream last night, she says. You pause, letting her continue. I was standing in a room full of chairs, empty ones, and every time I spoke, someone sat down. I couldn't see their faces, but they were listening. She folds her hands in her lap. I think that's what ruling is. Not shouting from a throne, not silencing others, just speaking so clearly that people remember your voice when you're gone. You think of how many voices you've forgotten, and how hers still lingers in every room she's ever touched. Today is not a feast day, no public appearance, no letters, no proclamations, but you can sense something is ending, or perhaps completing. She puts on the plum-colored gown, the one with the subtle velvet lining, not for others, for herself. When you reach for the comb, she stops you. Let it fall today. You nod. Her hair hangs loose across her back like a river that finally found its mouth. She takes no breakfast, just tea. You pour it. She holds the cup with both hands and sips slowly, like someone savoring more than flavor. Outside, the court goes on. Pages running, boots echoing, doors opening and closing. But here in this chamber, time thins. You sit beside her, just for a moment, both of you watching the fire. You remember the first time you changed my sheets? She asks suddenly. I do. I didn't. You raise an eyebrow. She laughs. I didn't remember it then, but I do now. I remember how careful you were, as if the fabric might bite. It nearly did. She leans her head against the high back of the chair. I thought then, this girl will survive, not because she's clever, but because she's quiet in the right places. You don't know whether that's a compliment. You take it as one. You know, she adds, they'll try to write me out again. You nod. They'll say I was beloved, or hated, or irrelevant. You nod again. But you'll remember the truth, won't you? You answer without hesitation. I already do. The queen closes her eyes for a moment, and when she opens them again, she is utterly calm. You may go, she says softly. You hesitate. I don't mean forever, she adds. Just for now. Oh, you rise. You adjust the blanket one last time, 6 inches, neat, complete. She watches you with something like pride. You reach the door, then pause, and turn. Should I lock it? You ask. She smiles. No, let them come. You close the door behind you, and as you walk down the hall, past tapestries and oil lamps and quiet guards, you feel it all beginning to fade. Not the queen, not the chamber, but the part of you that needed to serve silently. You are no longer a servant of the bedchamber. You are a keeper of its story, and you will tell it gently if asked, and fiercely if challenged, because you were there when the queen remembered who she was, when a bed became a throne, when silence became a crown. And now, it's over. The chamber is still. The fire burns low. The doors have closed behind you, but her story, your story, remains. You've walked corridors in soft shoes. You've folded blankets like signals. You've listened more than you've spoken. And you've learned that power doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wears linen. So rest now. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders loosen. There are no candles to trim tonight, no messages to carry, no kings to avoid, no eyes watching from behind a tapestry, just quiet, and the steady warmth of knowing you were part of something that mattered. You were a witness, a guardian, a quiet defiance wrapped in modest sleeves. And the queen? She's still there, sitting where you left her, tea cooling at her elbow, eyes half closed, but listening, because queens never really sleep. They just wait, and so do you. If your eyes are growing heavy now, let them. If your blanket is slightly off center, let it be. You've done enough. You've carried stories, secrets, silences. Now, carry yourself to sleep. She's safe. You're safe. And the fire, though low, is still warm. Good night, my friend. You kept the chamber. You kept the truth. You kept the queen. End of script. Sweet dreams.